Welcome to Glory to Gaming. My name is Steve, and today I'll be your guide to Dark Souls 3. Today we'll be taking a look at Dark Souls 3 melee build. I've probably played through Dark Souls 1 about 14 times. I've played through Dark Souls 2 twice, and this is my third playthrough of Dark Souls 3. Out of all my countless hours with Dark Souls, I've only ever used this build. I've never used magic, I've never used pyromancy, and this is really all I know. So I figured with all of my countless hours of experience, maybe I could shed some light on this build. This video primarily will focus on a two-handed build. A lot of people, when using melee in Dark Souls, prefer to use one-handed shield. This video is not for them. This is a very aggressive approach. You're going to use the weight of your weapon to stagger your enemies, and you're going to go for an approach that is, kill your enemy before they kill you. Let's start with the basics. One of the first things that I tell any new Dark Souls player is to go into their inventory and unequip all of their items. Rolling is extremely important for this build. You're not going to be blocking much, and your main course here is just to avoid any incoming damage. Once you have done this, roll around a bunch. Get used to this. This is the speed you always want to roll at, even at the expense of losing armor. You may ask, but wait, if I'm playing a melee build, isn't armor extremely important to my survival? Am I going to take a lot of damage? The answer to both those questions is yes. You are going to take a lot of damage. And yes, armor is important to a degree. You want as much armor as possible, but never at the cost of mobility. Movement is extremely important for this build. If you cannot move or dodge attacks, you are going to die. If you find yourself struggling with the decision of what class to start with, my advice to you is don't overthink it. It's really not all that important. By the end, you're probably going to have enough stats to get what you want anyway. The most important factors here is really your health. You're going to need a lot of health with this build. Preferably, I choose the warrior. He's got a good amount of health and a great starting weapon. Next, we're going to take a look at stat priority and leveling up. Vigor is not only the first on the list, but it's also the first one that I actually pump up. Vigor is directly associated with HP, and because you're going to be up close and take a lot of damage, you're going to need a lot of health to counteract that. Next is Endurance. Endurance is directly associated with Stamina, and as I've stated, this is a very aggressive build, and because of this, you're going to need a decent amount of Stamina to get hits in and roll away when necessary. Next is Vitality, and despite its name, it's not a very important part of this build. Vitality is associated with Equip Load and Poison Resistance, and though Equip Load is very good, Vitality doesn't give you much of it, and therefore it can pretty much be disregarded. Next is Strength. Now Strength and Dexterity are both very important stats for this build, but it really varies depending on what weapon you're using and what the bonuses are. Strength will probably be your primary damage stat. Pump this about as much as you can, and as far as Dexterity is concerned, it's probably going to fall off sooner, but get as much as you can in, just because, well, more damage isn't bad. As far as what you should increase first is concerned, this is really left to preference. You might find at some time that you're missing a little bit of this, or at another time you need a little bit more of that. What I do usually start with, though, is Vigor. I'll get Vigor to about 25, then I'll move on to Strength and Dexterity. Heavily pumping Strength, and a little Dexterity here and there. Once I find that these stats are not increasing my weapon damage that much, you're going to need a little bit more Stamina to increase that DPS. This is when you move to Endurance. As you start getting up in higher levels in Dark Souls 3, it becomes increasingly important to start looking out for diminishing returns. If you're unfamiliar with this term, all it really means is, I'm putting up this stat, but it's not really giving me as much as it used to. In this case, you're going to want to start balancing it out a little bit. Look for where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. At the end of Dark Souls 3 for my first playthrough, I had about 50 Strength, 20 Endurance, 30 Vigor, and 30 Dexterity. I had finished roughly about level 80. When it comes to equipment, there's a lot of flexibility here. Dark Souls 3 has a lot of weapons, and what works best for me is probably not going to work best for you. I would, however, like to mention two pieces of gear that I do feel is very essential to this build. One of which is the Havel's Ring. This will increase your equip load and can be found through the Soul of the Stray Demon. The Grasscrest Shield will greatly increase stamina regeneration even on your back. This can be found in Crucifixion Woods. But wait, we're not using shields, right? Well, you don't actually have to use this shield. It can actually just be on your back, and if it's on your back, it will still provide the bonus. This build obviously requires a hard-hitting weapon, but make sure that it doesn't swing too slow. It's really important that you find that sweet spot in between. You see, if it swings too slow, you're going to find that you're not going to be able to get a lot of hits in, and you're also going to need a lot of stamina in order to roll away when necessary. I'd love to thank everyone for watching my video. I try to be very proactive with my community, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. If you enjoyed the video, toss it a like, and if you'd like to see more, then subscribe. Have a good one.